They're not going to sign the deal. I think Trump's going to have to do some sort of a strike, and I think that's what they're banking on. From what I understand, he wanted to do it earlier but was pulled back at the last minute.
Donald Trump has said Iran has two choices to avoid military action: drop its nuclear ambitions and stop killing protesters. His latest remarks follow weeks of pressure on Iran to negotiate a deal on its nuclear program. Meanwhile, Iran has warned it will retaliate to any US attack instantly and that its response would not be limited. Joining us now is David Patrikarakos, a foreign correspondent for UnHerd and author of Nuclear Iran, The Birth of an Atomic State. Welcome to the show, David.
Hi, Ed.
So it seems to me highly likely, given the amount of ships that the US has moved to the Middle East, that a strike on Iran is highly likely. If it does happen, what are the consequences likely to be?
Well, yeah, I mean, they really have moved a serious amount of hardware into the region, notably the aircraft carrier Abraham Lincoln. Now, a strike on Iran needs to be measured, it needs to be surgical, and it needs to be restrained, as counterintuitive as that sounds. We don't want another Iraq. Donald Trump doesn't want another Iraq. But we need to understand several things. First of all, Trump made a promise, and it wasn't a vague, platitudinous expression of support. He said to the Iranian protesters, help is on its way. Now, I'm in contact with people inside Iran and who have recently returned from Iran. They took those words at face value. They took it as a promise, and that got people out onto the street. Since that promise was made, people were massacred. Trump now has, for his own credibility and for all our credibility, to do something to help those protesters. And that means a surgical strike. Now, they can do several things. The IRGC, or the Iran's security rather, is based on three pillars. It has its foreign forces, it has its navy, and it has its ballistic missile stocks. Now, those ballistic missile stocks can be targeted and should be targeted. Equally, the Iranian Navy should be struck as well. We have clear targets that can be struck without causing mass civilian damage or an all-out and broader war, and they must be used now.
Absolutely. And obviously, given the astonishing and disgusting massacre of protesters by the Iranian regime, I mean, it seems that there is no way. You talk about a surgical strike, and I totally understand why you would say that was the right strategy for the US. But this regime will stop at nothing to hold on to power. So it won't ultimately help the protesters, will it?
Well, look, it's all about the various levers of pressure that you can apply. Now, as I always say, and I repeat this over and over, this regime, in terms of its survivability, the rot is terminal, if not necessarily imminent. In previous protests, people were protesting about the veil. They were protesting about human rights. They wanted electoral reform. It's not about that anymore. It's existential. They want this regime gone. Now, these senile savages that have oppressed the people for decades are not only cruel and oppressive, they're incompetent. They've mismanaged everything. So will it bring about the end of the regime? Probably not. Will it be yet one more lever of pressure that can be exerted? Yes, it will. And I'll say something else here. For decades, we did nothing. We said, no, let's try and see some reform from within. Let's see if we can negotiate with the Iranians. Look, I've come on a journey. I wasn't for military action 5, 10, 15 years ago. I thought there could be reform here, but there isn't. All they do is double down and increase the brutality. Now, we saw with Assad what happened. We made a mistake. We didn't enforce our own red line when it came to his use of chemical weapons. Donald Trump has put a line in the sand. Now he needs to enforce it. Will it bring the mullah's end? Probably not. Will it help? It can only help, I think.
Excellent. And in terms of nuclear ambitions, again, that seems slightly irrelevant in some way if the regime is on its last knees anyway, and it probably doesn't have the resources really to really double down on its nuclear program.
Look, that's a good point. I suspect this is more about political posturing and rhetoric. Trump, I think, knows that the Iranians won't sign the type of deal that he wants, because that will be a total capitulation from their point of view. Don't forget, look, this is not a democracy, it's a dictatorship. You cannot look weak to the outside world, but above all to your own people. Now, the nuclear program lies in ruins. To what degree it's totally destroyed, we don't know, but it's been pretty well destroyed. They don't have the money to start it again, but it does remain a point of political leverage for them. They're not going to sign the deal. I think Trump's going to have to do some sort of a strike, and I think that's what they're banking on. From what I understand, he wanted to do it earlier, but was pulled back at the last minute, possibly about a lack of total readiness from Israeli air defenses, from the inevitable Iranian retaliation that will come their way. So I think it's now time to move forward. He has to.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. That's David Patrikarakos, the foreign correspondent and author of Nuclear Iran, The Birth of an Atomic State.